Hello everyone and welcome to the Garden Shack. My name's Michelle Cox and I'm with the TLC Garden Center. This is my very first video that I'm doing for my educational series, and today we're going to do a video on succulents. And so this is probably one of the number one things that we sell in the store. We sell them all year round, and winter, which it is right now, it's January, it's cold outside, it's a great garden project to do inside. So this is going to be a two-part series, and the first series part of the series that we're going to talk about is actually succulents themselves, what they are, why you want to even grow them, how do you take care of them, and then the second part will be on actually creating a garden that you can have inside your home and that you can take out later in the year. So exactly what is a succulent? Well, a succulent actually isn't a scientific classification. It's just a description of a kind of plant. All of these that I have here are different kinds of succulents, and what makes them a succulent is they've adapted to be able to store water up in their stems and in their leaves, and that's what gives them that swollen appearance. So we really like them because they're really super easy to grow. They're ideal plants if you're a really busy person and you don't have a lot of time to give to your plants, but you want to have plants in the house, or you want to have some plants out on your porch. They get very few diseases, they really don't have insect problems, and they're really adapted to tolerate heat, drought, and poor soil. As a houseplant, as long as they have good light, they're really adapted well to the warmth of your house and the low humidity in there. They're very slow growing, so they don't grow real fast. You don't have to do a lot of trimming or pruning. Once the temperature is over 50 degrees, both day and night, or if you live in a zone that's over 50 degrees, they can go outside. There's a very wide range of shapes, colors, kinds, and sizes. And you know, they're pretty fun to work with. They're pretty addictive too, so be careful, because I made one and I got hooked, and the next thing you know, I'm making succulent gardens out of everything I can find. Now, one of the things to think about when you're planting succulents, especially if you're outside, is you want to make sure that whatever spot you pick in your lawn, that they're in full sun. They need 6 hours or more of sun outside, and they need to be in an area that gets full drainage. If you're going to plant cactus outside and you get them for the zone that you live in, you're going to want to amend the soil a little bit by adding some sand into the soil. Now, when I say add sand, I'm talking about like contractor sand, not playground sand. Playground sand isn't washed and it has a lot of salt in it. So you want to use that washed sand. The salt has been washed out of it, and that will help amend your soil for the cactus. The other thing with the cactus is they'll actually do better if you put them in a raised bed instead of just flat in the ground. The other thing too is succulents are great in containers. And so there's a lot of different containers to talk about and choose, but one of the biggest things you want to think about is make sure that your container has drainage. So you can go to the store and find a lot of different containers out there. There's containers that you can buy for vertical gardens. There's some like this. There's some that actually have pockets in them where you can put the succulents in. Most of these will drain around the seams, but if you need to drill a little hole, or if you need to take an awl, you can pop a hole in there with a hammer and an awl to create the drainage in there. You'll see a lot of the other containers. There's a lot of really cool ones out there, different shapes, different sizes, from ones like this that are like a faux stone to the ceramic ones. Now, be careful when you get ceramic, because a lot of them don't have drainage in the bottom. So if you're going to use a ceramic dish, you want to make sure that it's deep enough that you can get a layer of rock in there so that your roots don't sit in wet water, because your succulents will definitely die if they're sitting in water and their feet get all wet and they're wet all the time. So I like to use a lot of different things, even using these little trays like this. This is a little florist tray. I like to make these. You can make a nice Zen succulent garden in one of these. I look for things all the time that I can upcycle and put the succulents in, from bird baths to tubs to wagons to just different kinds of containers. Now, the biggest thing to keep in mind is if you're going to make it in a tub or a wagon or a container, something large, and you're going to have it outside, I don't know that I would spend a lot of money on really expensive succulents if you're not in the zone where they can overwinter outside, because you're definitely not going to take a big bathtub or a big bird bath and drag it into your house in the winter. So keep that in mind. If you're going to use a tub, a bathtub, maybe you want to put a container in the container so that you can bring it in the winter. The other thing you want to make sure that you're doing is make sure that after you've planted your succulent gardens that they completely dry out in between waterings. So the goal is that you're going to water it and water it well so that you get the dirt all wet, and then that water is going to get sucked up through the roots and get stored in the leaves, and then you're going to repeat the cycle after it dries out. So not just little bitty tinklings of water, you want to make sure you water them well. If you can water at the base of the plant, that's good. Sometimes if it's really full, you have to water the whole thing. And the other thing to remember is if you're watering inside and you have drainage holes in the bottom of your container and you have it sitting on your beautiful wood coffee table, take it to the kitchen sink and water, let it drain, and then maybe put something underneath it so that water doesn't drain onto your nice furniture. So those are some of the basics about planting, and there are some other things that we'll talk about here in this session. So one of the things that you can do is out in the stores, they do sell different kinds of potting soil. You can find a bag at the store. They've got it for cactus, they've got it for succulents. I don't necessarily buy the pre-made bags because I always have everything laying around. The biggest thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have good drainage in my dirt when I'm planting my succulents. So I like to mix up my own. So one of the things that I will do when I'm mixing up my own is I always have bags of extra potting soil laying around the garage, or a lot of times you can find a really inexpensive bag because you don't need a lot of soil when you're doing succulents, and it really does depend on the size of your container. But like I found this little bag on sale at the end of the season. I got it for 99 cents. And so what I've done is I've dumped some of that in this little bowl, and I will pre-mix some of the dirt that I like to use. So what I'll do is if I'm using succulents, then I will take the potting soil and I will mix in equal parts of perlite, and that's that little foam stuff that you see, and you can buy bags of this, but I'll mix in equal parts of perlite with the contractor's sand. And then I'll mix that up, and this will allow for that drainage in the soil that you're looking for so that the water runs through really well. Now, sometimes you can mix peat moss in it if you don't have any sand. That'll work well to break the soil up and allow that water to drain through. I never use just straight potting soil because a lot of times it doesn't drain as fast as I want it to, and it holds the water. And this is what I'm going to use to create my succulent garden with. And I'll supplement this in my container while I'm making my garden with the dirt that's already on the succulents in the containers as I'm using them. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can use as well to create drainage in the bottom of a container if you don't have drainage, or you have a container that you have no way of making drainage in. If your container is deep enough, so for example, if you have the right drill bit, you could actually drill holes in the bottom of this, but maybe you don't have that. So you want to be able to create that layer of rock. Pea gravel is a really great way to make a layer of rock in the bottom of a container. And so what I'll do is I'll drop that layer of rock in there, and then I'll put a base layer of this soil that I just made, and then I'll start working with the succulents and planting the garden with the dirt. So I left quite a bit of room there so that I can work in there. So you want to make sure you have that layer of rock in there if you have a container that doesn't have drainage. There's a lot of other things that you can do, and planting the succulents themselves is only part of the whole look that you're going for. There's a lot of different accessories that you can use in your garden to give it that texture, to give it those different really dynamic looks, and to give your garden a lot of interest and make it really fun looking. Things out there that you can use are reindeer moss. It comes in a lot of different colors. I have some purple and aqua blue here. And a lot of times when I'm creating my garden, before I do it, I'll think about what's the color scheme that I want to do. Do I want it to contrast and be opposite colors? Or do I want to kind of stay within the same tone and have those colors kind of all blend together? Other great things that you can use are orchid chips. They're really small. They're earth tone in color, and they can add some texture to your garden as well. I'll use different rocks, and there's a lot of different places that you can get rocks. These white ones, I actually bought these at the dollar store, the Dollar Tree, and you can get a bag of those white ones. They're like $1 and they go a long ways. Fish gravel is another good one, especially if you want to bring in some different colors. There's all different kinds of fish gravel out there, from pink, green, blue, white, different colors that you can use to create different textures and to add color to your garden. If you're doing maybe an aqua thing and you want to have like maybe a little beach scene, you've got some shells that you collected from the beach or the lake, you could add those in, and then they've got the fine sand that you can use on the top. And another thing that I do is I love to use rocks in there. I'll use everything from lava rocks to smooth pebbles, and you can find these at a garden center. Other places I've gone to find really cool looking rocks is I've gone up to oh, like a place that sells boulders or rocks or flagstone or things like that. And I'll ask if I can go walk around the yard and pick up little fragments and pieces of rocks off of the boulders. And they actually work really well in the containers to create some different heights or build a little vignette around. I also look out in my yard for things too. So I went out this morning and I found these hydrangeas. I found some of the smaller ones, and I can create some textural differences in a larger container by using maybe some dried hydrangeas. This one I found and all the little petals fell off, so I thought it had a really interesting shape to it, and I can use that to create some height or different textural elements in my succulent garden. I'll also use things like lotus pods. I'll put those in there. I'll use bark and I'll break it up and create a vertical element with the bark. You can do that with little logs as well. If you're doing a bigger garden, you can find pieces to build your garden around, like a piece of driftwood. This is a grapevine, and so I've let those both dry out. And if I have a bigger container, I'll build a vignette around the different log pieces. And then you can also use dried sticks and twigs in your garden. So here I have some red twig dogwood, and I've just taken the tips off of those. This is actually some birch branches that fell off my tree outside, and I just went and picked them up and trimmed them down, but I can create a vertical element with those. I can also use these to hold other containers. So if maybe I wanted to create a cascading waterfall effect out of a watering can, I have these little mini watering cans, and I could plant something like a draping succulent or a string of pearls, plant it in there and make it look like it's falling, and then use the stick to create that look so that it looks like it's watering into the dish. So a lot of different things that you can do, and you're only as limited as your imagination will take you. So that's a little bit about succulents. They're fun, they're great, they're easy to grow. We hope you've enjoyed this class, and tune in for part 2 where we're actually going to make a succulent garden and see how to put that all together. I'm Michelle at the Garden Shack with the Gardens at TLC, and I will see you next time.